I have made some big financial mistakes over the years. Some are bigger than others, but in the end, they all have one thing in common: regret. But I figure that maybe if I can talk about my regret and why I feel that way about these past decisions, that it could help someone out there who has maybe done something similar not feel so alone, or maybe even better, help some of you to never make the biggest financial mistake of all, and that was to go into debt again and again and again. I was married very young, barely 18, and us two kids, we were able to rack up some serious credit card debt very quickly. And then guess what we did? We got divorced. And whose name do you think all of those credit cards were in? Yep, you guessed it, this girl. So there I was, 22 years old, divorced with a 4-year-old daughter and $40,000 worth of credit card debt that I could not pay. This resulted in having extremely bad credit for years. Not an easy life for a single mom. I could not even open a checking account because I owed Bank of America for a past overdrawn account. So I was paying all of my bills in person. Anytime I was looking to rent a new place, I would have to pray that the landlord would not want to do a credit check. I was paying more for utility deposits and car insurance, not to mention the threatening letters, the never-ending phone calls, and the fear of having my tax refund check intercepted every single year. So let's fast forward 10 years, and now I'm 33. I am newly divorced again, and now I have two daughters to raise. I also had managed to sprinkle in a little student debt onto my credit report. I did have what I would consider a better job at this point. It had a consistent paycheck at least. So I decided that I was going to take care of my credit report once and for all and get it all cleaned up. I read this book called Good Credit is Sexy. Yes, I know, the name sold me too. And I actually followed the advice that is in this book. I got some of the accounts removed altogether. I made phone calls. I negotiated. I made payment plans. I worked a lot of overtime. I cleaned houses after work and on the weekends. It took me over a year, but I finally did it. I had a clear credit report with no negative accounts. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking that I ran right back out and got a bunch of credit cards and got right back into debt again. But I didn't. I feel like I kind of learned my lessons with credit cards, right? We'll see. What I did end up doing was buying a brand new car. It was the first brand new car I had ever purchased. It was a 2009 Scion XB. You guys remember those? We called it the Brave Little Toaster. The payment was $385 a month, which wasn't terrible, and I could afford it. I was being very careful with my money. I had it all budgeted out. So the next thing that I do is I purchase my first home. And this house, the bones were great. It was in very good condition, but it did need a lot of updating. It needed new flooring, new appliances, paint, lighting, all of the things. But I was not going out and putting any of this on credit. I was waiting until I had the cash, and then I would get these things one at a time. Now, I will be honest here in saying that I wasn't consciously telling myself, no, you can't put that on credit. I think what was really going on is that I had lived without credit for so long that it really didn't even occur to me to put any of these things on credit. So I'm walking around on cement floors in this house because I had ripped up all of the carpet, and my parents came to visit. And while they were there, my dad insisted on getting me some things from Home Depot, which was super nice. And my mom and I went to Home Depot to look at some stuff. And when we first walked in, right at the front, there was this flooring, the laminate flooring, nothing special. It was actually the cheapest flooring that they had, and it was 89 cents a square foot. But I loved it, and I would have loved to have it in my home. And I pointed it out to my mom, and I said, wow, I'd really love to have this flooring. I wish that I could afford it. And she said, why don't you just get a Home Depot credit card? And I remember answering her in some way that was basically like, I don't think that I would get approved. And she said to me, and I quote, "If your credit is good enough to buy a home, your credit is good enough to get a Home Depot credit card." And I thought, that's a good point, Mom. And she was right. Instant approval. My dad went the next day and picked up all of my new flooring. So now I have my first credit card in 12 years, $2,000 completely maxed out. Over the next couple years, I have some dental work done. That's $6,000 added to another credit card. And I bought a new couch that was $1,300 on yet another credit card. So now I'm up to about $10,000 in credit card debt plus the car. So at this point, I am pretty much tapped out. I am working as much as I can. I'm working as much overtime as I can possibly get. I'm going in on weekends. I'm bringing stuff home from work to do in the evenings. I'm doing side jobs, just anything I can think of. And all I'm doing is making the minimum payments. I'm barely keeping my head above water at this point. And added bonus, I'm also in the payday advance trap. That escalated quickly. 2 years go by, enter Jason. With two incomes now and Jason entering the relationship with zero debt, I was able to pay off that $10,000 in credit card debt very quickly. Lucky, lucky, right? Now, if you notice, I can remember exactly what I had the debt for that time around: flooring, a couch, dental work. And I also very clearly remember the exact amounts that were on these cards. And that's because these accounts were only opened for those things. But these next two times of going into debt that we are about to talk about were very different. How the debt came about was very different. What it was for, how we paid it off, just very different scenarios. So these two times around, it was actually kind of a blur as to what was put onto all of these credit cards, but I don't even know if that's important. I mean, no matter what, at that time, I either thought it was important, maybe I did actually need some of the items, or they were somehow just enough of a want for me to be willing to pay that high interest. Now I look back and think nothing was worth putting ourselves into the debt that we did. We end up getting a $45,000 consolidation loan. So now we have two vehicle payments, an RV payment, and a $1,500 a month consolidation loan payment. I will say that the stress level went down with this loan. We took 30 payments and rolled them into one. It had a much lower interest rate than the credit cards did, and it had an end date, which was 3 years, $1,500 a month, every month for 3 years. And of course, you already know, what do people always say they will do when they take out a loan to pay off credit card debt? Never again, never again. I will never use my credit cards ever again unless there's an emergency, unless I'm getting points, unless I can pay off the balance in full at the end of the month. And I think for 1 full year we did this. We did not use any of the credit cards. And I can remember very clearly the first time that we did. We were in California working. Jason is a contractor and the job was about to end. So we were going to be leaving California and coming home to Florida to check on the house and take a break in between the jobs. But before we left, since we weren't sure if we were ever going to go back to California again, we decided that we must go to Hawaii. We must, right? We were already halfway there. Flying from LA is way better than flying all the way from Miami. So here comes the card. We booked the flights, the Airbnb, and the rental car. And it begins. Looking back, I know all of the wrong turns, but at the time, it was all perfectly justified in our minds. And you already know it. All of the cards ended up right back where we started. And this last time, we went all out, you guys, at our highest point of being in debt, we were over $300,000 into the consumer debt. This included 2 vehicle payments, we had 2 RV payments, we had some personal loans, we had a golf cart, and of course the credit cards. Now, this amount did not include our mortgage. And I am not sharing this with you so you can get holier than thou in the comments and say how you live very frugal and your parents taught you very young how to live frugal. Maybe you live in another country and debt does not work this way in your country. You want to tell me how this would never happen to you, how you know how to live within your means, how you just cannot fathom or understand how anybody could possibly get into this much debt. Believe me, we don't either. That's the whole point. That's why this channel exists. That's why I'm talking to you right now. We don't either. But you know what? It does happen. It happens a lot to very smart people, very hardworking people, to people who think they have it all under control, to people who make great money and think that they can handle one more payment. So 3.5 years ago, I decided it was time to make a change. Once and for all, stop consuming, stop spending, stop thinking that we deserved it all, stop telling ourselves just this one thing, because it's not one thing or one time. It is a snowball that rolls completely out of control and it ends up bowling you over. And now you have so much debt that you can't breathe. And you start convincing yourself that having monthly payments to every bank that exists is just normal. That's just how it is. Well, it's not. Just decide. That is all I did. I decided. I was going to change. My husband was going to change, whether he liked it or not. And our kids were going to change. This family was going to do a 180. And I didn't just dip my toe into this. I jumped in head first. And I have to tell you guys, when I read this script to Jason right before I started filming, after I read that to him, he said, "Oh yes, you certainly did." And it was a lot of work. It took 2 full years. We sold big ticket items. We bit the bullet and paid out large chunks of money to things that we were upside down on, like RVs and vehicles. We were working 80 plus hours a week. We learned to say no. We cut spending way back. And was all of this perfect? No, not even close. We still made mistakes. And of course, I look back now and I see all of the ways that we could have done much better and we could have paid it off a lot faster. But in the end, we did do it. We paid it all off, and you can too. And I'm sure you were thinking, well, Jen, it takes more than deciding. Where did the money come from? It comes from lowering expenses and raising your income, letting things go and learning to say no. I call this whole process working for yourself. Every time I did something like cancel a subscription, instant pay raise. Meal planned and cooked at home, lowered expense. Search for the best price on car insurance. Switch to a cheaper phone plan. Cut back on beauty appointments. Learn to cut Jason's hair. Buy used items versus new items. It was all money to pay off this debt. And you can start right now with just doing things differently. Each thing, each change that you make is you working for yourself too, adding money to your pocket. And in case you're wondering what my very first step was, it was to do a no spend, or what some people call a no buy challenge. It was a total reset for us. And we ended up learning a lot about ourselves and obviously our spending habits by doing it. 30 days was the amount of time that I committed to at first, but once I saw how much we were able to save in that first 30 days, I did it for another 30 days. And even now, I am still on a version of the no buy. I stopped the mindless spending, I track what we do spend, and I have a written budget. Ooh, yes, everyone's favorite word, budget. If you hear that and you immediately think to yourself, I would never have a real budget for whatever reason. Maybe you've never done one. Maybe you aren't sure how. Maybe you think that it would be too much work. Whatever your reason is for not having that written plan for your paycheck, I'd like you to watch this next video that's going to pop up here on the screen. This is where I show beginners how to get started, how to set it up, how to really know what you're doing. So if you are ready to just stop going further and further into debt and have a real paycheck routine, check this out and I will see you next time.